So, Jose, we've been speaking a lot about the changing nature of HR and how it's becoming more strategic over time. Can you share with us what that means to you?
Well, I think in our case, it means that we have to be in the core business, that we have to be fully integrated into everything that's going on within the business. So, for example, if there are any mergers or acquisitions, we have to be in there early on. If there's organizational design issues, performance issues, HR professionals have always been expected to be sometimes at the back end. In our case, being far more strategic means being in the front end, being right there integrated with the business leaders, with the operators, for HR people to see themselves as business partners rather than support people in the functions.
So, as you talk about becoming more strategic, does this mean HR is now taking on different challenges than they had in the past?
I would say that far more sophisticated challenges. I do believe that the business is expecting HR to behave differently, to act differently, to display different types of behaviors at the table. So it is no longer about taking orders. It is no longer about being a very client-focused administrative function, but instead to be more of a business partner, leader in the organization, someone who has a core competency around the people and human capital issues and bringing that to the organization.
So what might that look like? How does HR exhibit itself in that manner?
Well, in our case, for example, when we land a large deal, when our national sales group goes out and lands a fairly large account, it means that they turn to us first to make sure that we are preparing the organization for the change management issues that are coming in, that we quickly recruit the talent that needs to support that account, that we in fact are embedded into their systems when it comes to training and developing that talent, and that we are in many times in many instances working even with the clients, the external clients, to ensure that the service delivery that our people in general, not necessarily just the HR function, but that our customer service teams and our national sales teams are delivering is appropriate for that account. That's just one example.
So you're really out there now across the entire business, no longer kind of backroom HR the way people used to think about it.
Correct.
So what are the new competencies that you need in HR professionals that maybe you didn't need 10 years ago?
Well, when we talk about the business, I think business acumen is clearly one of the first ones. You need HR professionals that understand how to read a P&L, that can in fact sit in the room, listen to conversations going on between operators, finance leaders, IT professionals, marketers, and others, and understand what the conversation is about and ensure that what HR delivers is appropriate and is in fact the right move for the organization at the right time. So business acumen, I would say, is one of the most critical elements.
And it sounds like you also said listening and interpreting that into a way that, interpreting the business strategy and what that means for how to get the people, the talent involved.
Absolutely.
To achieve that.
So you have to be able to integrate what you do into the business. So it's no longer just a program that is meant to deliver performance management or deliver a social relations resolution, but instead, why are you doing it? How is that impacting the EBITDA of the organization? How is that impacting through other ROI or return on investment measures? That's what's important for us. And I think that's just one of the competencies that we have to display nowadays. There are others. I would say that certainly the strategic thinking. You have to be able to see into the future of whatever it is that you're recommending. How is that impacting the long-term viability of the organization? How is what HR is doing today going to impact how the organization performs a year or two from today?
And I presume that includes really thinking through what could go poorly, right?
Absolutely.
Not as planned.
Absolutely. And then how do you correct those derailers, for lack of a better term? And I would say finally that courage is certainly one of those other competencies that, as the level of sophistication of HR continues to grow, and as we bring in more individuals into the organization that have strong business acumen, that have the strategic agility in order to deliver good HR, they have to have the courage. They have to be able to also present themselves in a way that can provide results, can provide solutions without backing down in some instances.
And in a number of what we've been talking about, you have used examples of mergers and acquisitions. Your company is rather famous for having grown through M&A. What kind of unique challenges does that lead in terms of managing a core group of people?
I believe there's two probably primary drivers that at least human resources is accountable for, and change management, certainly one of them, and then communications. Those two elements are critical in any acquisition, and as you mentioned, Anthem has been an organization that has grown from the 1990s through today through a series of acquisitions, and we are an amalgamation of all these brands put together into this one large entity. But it has been through successful change management and overly communicating to the associates how that acquisition will impact them. And generally, it has been a very positive experience to our associates because those acquisitions have provided growth and opportunity to our associates. So we have a culture where acquisitions have benefited the organization. We've grown significantly because of it.
And what is HR's role in creating a culture that encourages people to find these as opportunities as opposed to threats?
Well, I'll tell you, we are heavily involved even in the due diligence to ensure that the company we're acquiring has a culture that would fit into our organization. And if it doesn't, what are the programs or what is the remediation tactics that need to be taken into consideration once the company is acquired? Then there is, in fact, a pretty well-oiled machine when it comes to the integration process. The due diligence that goes on segues into integration planning and then segues into a true tactical plan once the deal is closed. And HR is at the forefront of that, whether it's changing policies and procedures with the acquired company, whether it's titling issues. So it gets very tactical, but more importantly, all of it goes back to how did that change management occur? How do we communicate to these new associates that are becoming part of the Anthem family? How did we assimilate them into our organization? How did they react as they were onboarded into our organization? How did we impact them positively or negatively as they were brought into the Anthem family?
So this seems like a tremendous example of how HR has progressed. That it's not hard to imagine 10 or 15 years ago, the entire M&A part would have been basically a balance sheet issue.
Correct.
How does the finance work?
Correct.
And you're saying now HR is actually is out there in the due diligence, trying to make sure there's a fit among talent, and then once that decision has been made, actually driving that change management process.
Absolutely. In fact, statistics show that many mergers and acquisitions fail because of culture issues. It's not necessarily because the financials weren't determined properly. So when you think about the success ratio, it has been driven many instances by whether or not cultures are able to integrate properly. HR needs to be the driver of that change. And we are going to be part of the decision makers, and we're going to be part of the enablers, for lack of a better term, in ensuring that there is a proper change management process in place so that the cultures are blended properly.
So HR is actually where things are happening. This is
I
where
would say
everyone
so,
should be,
yeah.
right?
I absolutely would say that especially when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, it is very dependent on the people activities, the human capital activities. And in some companies, it may be HR that's driving it or a subset of it, but in some other companies, the people components that are not taken seriously, that are not taken into consideration, generally lead to a bad outcome.
So now switching gears a little bit, can you tell us what you think HR's role is in terms of CEO succession? Where should HR, or C-suite succession in general, where should HR be involved in that process?
Well, I would categorize it as the full C-suite, and we are, I would say, very traditional in our means where we have a 9-box that measures performance and potential. I think what we do differently that many of our talent competitors may not is we do not just solely rely on our operators and our business leaders to take the lead. We, in many instances, have to, as HR professionals, take the lead when it comes to succession planning. What do I mean by that? We not only help identify the talent in that matrix, in that 9 box, with the help of our business leaders. But we also ensure that they go through very targeted development programs. We want to make sure that the mobility opportunities are there for those individuals that the business leaders target. Beyond that, we have a responsibility to ensure that it is not a program that identifies talent that is solely a mirror image of that leader. Companies evolve, talent needs to evolve, so we need to look at talent and what the requirements of that talent are going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, as opposed to what it is that we need today.
So this is, again, what you were talking about. HR needs to see into the future and imagine
Absolutely.
and understand what those business needs will be.
And not necessarily just make it an administrative process. You have to display courage in some instances, lead your business partners in the right direction to ensure that the talent that they're positioning for growth, those individuals that are being determined for succession planning, whether it's for C-suite or even below that they have the competencies, that they have the leadership skills and other abilities to move into those roles, but not just for the job today, but the job for 3 to 5 years from now, as I mentioned.
So thank you very much for joining us today. You've made it quite clear, I think, that HR is the place to be now.
Absolutely.
It requires business acumen and seeing into the future, and it's the HR leaders that will be driving business of the future.
Fully agree. My pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
we
you.
Appreciate it.